Hello and welcome to GCN Film Review. Kind of. Anyway, the first collection of our brand new films have just arrived on GCN Plus, which, if you've been living under a rock, is a new home for all our live racing, highlights and analysis, plus brand new exclusive documentaries and adventure films. Now, we are going to talk you through some of the first 24 that you can watch as of now, plus we're also going to give you a little bit more insight into how we made them from the people who made them, which, yes, in some cases means talking to Dan, and then Dan talking to me. When you look on the app, you'll see that we've split the films up into 5 sections: adventure, challenge, culture, history and legends, and science and tech. We are going to pick out 1 or 2 of these films from each section to give you a little bit of a taster of what's to come. And we're going to start with Legends, which, to be clear, Dan, you've presented some of these, but you're not actually the legend, unfortunately.
No, I felt like it was missold to me. They asked me if I wanted to be a part of the Legends series, and I said yes, of course. And it turns out I was just there to present, as you might expect. But I got to meet some proper legends. Been out to see 3 so far, so Andy Schleck, Andrea Taffy, and Fabien Cancellara. Fabien needs no introduction, really, does he? Because he was a legend, as they all were, but also because he retired so recently, so we all have him fresh in our minds. Andy, he was really interesting because he retired at a very young age, under 30 years of age, and achieved a lot in that time, but potentially not quite as much as many people thought he should have done, given the talent that he had. Runner-up at the Tour de France behind Contador, was later promoted to first and given the yellow jersey. Then he had a really big fall from grace, like got an injury, didn't really ever pick up any big results from a certain point in his career, and retired before he was even 30. And it was a bit of a sad demise, really, and finish of his career. After which he took himself off to Mallorca, collected his thoughts, decided what he wanted to do with his life. And he's not really been around the sport of cycling as racing, but he has got a huge bike shop now in Luxembourg, which has to be seen to be believed in itself. But it was great chatting to him, and we went fishing at his own lake. Apparently after they were quite successful, he and Frank, his brother, bought a lake instead of a Porsche.
Through the press conference, because that was visibly very emotional.
Oh yeah, for sure the hardest press conference I ever had in my life. Before was just like, about races, and here was like really telling, that my area or my time has come to an end. I was going through a whole lot of emotions that morning, but it was so important for me, and that was done for me. Really, my new life started that day.
So when did you finally make the decision that you were going to stop?
Actually, when the doctors told me that I couldn't continue if I would expect to ride without pain in the future. For me, my goal was always winning the Tour de France and winning big races. And today, it's different. So change perspective, but the way how I do things today are the same than I did when I was a cyclist.
To be fair, I was absolutely gripped by the Andy Schleck thing. He was, as you say, a fascinating character. He also talks a little bit about Contador, doesn't he?
He does.
Brilliant.
He does.
But I think Taffy, that was just such an enjoyable film. That is a guy that seems like he's got life sorted.
He did, yeah. I mean, he, of all of those 3, is the longest retired, of course. He's 50 years of age now. He hung up his wheels many years ago after winning Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders, but hit the headlines, 2 years ago now, because he decided he was going to try and make a comeback and ride Paris-Roubaix at the age of 50. Now, it didn't work out, partly because he couldn't get the licence in time, because you have to be a part of the testing pool. He'd also broken his collarbone in like a Masters race. But I could see why he wanted to do it, because when I first went over to meet him, we were at his bed and breakfast, and we did some stuff with his olives, collecting them. But once we got onto 2 wheels and went for a bike ride, he was like a kid. You could just see that he was a changed person once he got back onto the bike. And not only that, still a racer as well, because he said, we have to go and see this section of Strada Bianca of white road, of gravel road, that he's proposed to the Giro d'Italia that they use within their race at some point. Once we hit that white road, I felt like I was in a race again. I mean, we were behind the car, which had the camera operator and the producer inside it, and we were flat out. They couldn't drive quick enough. And actually, by the end of the ride, I uploaded my ride Strava, and I was in the top 10 of that segment, trying to keep up with Taffy.
Well, anyway, drafting behind a car.
You go!
Yeah, probably cheating.
Yeah, right, flag.
But he was well up for it. I'd love to have seen how he would have got on in trying to do Paris-Roubaix again, but he just loves being on a bike.
Yeah, that comes across. Like I said, that's, I think, probably one of my absolute favourites. Now, before we leave Legends, well, actually, we'll leave Legends, but sticking with racing for a moment, because there's another brilliant film, isn't it, called The Lost Year, How Pro Cycling Saved the 2020 Season, basically about COVID and how pro cycling managed to race regardless of the pandemic. What can we expect from that one?
Well, it's a brilliant retrospective because, of course, the way that the UCI calendar changed and was revised last year, it was so condensed, and unbelievably, we did have all of the racing pretty much, but because it was so condensed, there wasn't a chance to breathe between every race to reflect on anything. And this is kind of a reflection of that whole season, the revised season, and how it affected different people. So not only have we got some cracking riders giving us diaries during lockdown, like Tom Schoynes, Elia Viviani, Elena Cecchini, a whole host of others, but also some real key players within the sport agreed to be on our film. David Lapatillon, UCI president, we've got Christian Prudhomme, director of ASO and the Tour de France, etc., with their insights onto how they managed the revised 2020 season. So that one is also a cracking film.
It is, isn't it? Right, now let's move on to challenges, shall we? There's a lot of super cool films in this one. Hank, as you might imagine, crops up quite a lot, doesn't he? But there's also one with Mark Threlfall from GTN.
Yeah, there is. So before we get on to Si's huge adventure, just after that, we'll first hand over to Mark, because he went and did the Norseman, didn't he? So Mark's a former professional triathlete. Turns out he's never done an Ironman ever, and he decided to literally dive in at the deep end with a Norseman. I mean, the word epic is overused, but that is the most extreme Ironman in the world. Here's his story from it.
There are three big events that people commonly talk about: the Olympic Games, the Ironman World Championships in Kona, and Norseman. Now, this event very first caught my eye the moment I got into triathlon. It was dubbed the toughest triathlon in the world. And oddly, that kind of appealed to me. Now, essentially, it is an iron distance triathlon. So 3.8 kilometer swim, a 180 kilometer bike, and then finishes with a marathon run. That is obviously tough enough in itself, but then add to that icy fjord waters on the swim, over 3,500 meters of elevation gain on the bike, a further 1,700 on the run, and you start to understand what people are talking about. Now, I was obviously very fortunate to be able to participate in this. However, I must add, it was my first iron distance event, so there were serious ups and downs during it, to the point that I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to complete it. But I was determined to get that infamous Norseman black finisher t-shirt. Now, we were also really lucky to be able to track and follow multiple Norseman winner Alan Hovda battling at the pointy end of the race. But it was Ole Peder Moe's story that really tugged on the heartstrings. He's a refrigerator salesman by day. He tried to do Norseman multiple times, and well, you're just going to have to watch the film to find out why.
The 15 minutes from when you jump out of the ferry until the gun goes off is the worst 15 minutes of my life. Just waiting, freezing, like you're in the water sculling, and I don't enjoy that part.
So here we are, the Norseman 2019, the world's toughest triathlon.
It's an incredible film, that one. It does make you reconsider triathlon. I mean, it looks epic. I know it is an epic triathlon anyway, but
it almost makes triathlon look appealing, doesn't it?
I wouldn't go that far. You definitely would not get me jumping off the ferry. I'd be very much on the ferry, watching the others.
I literally can't picture you jumping off a ferry into a Norwegian fjord, Dan. I mean,
there's a very good reason for that, Si.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to move on to some of Si's experiences of making the films for GCN Plus. You've been in a few, but you went over to Colombia with Jenny Graham, who's an ultra-endurance legend. But tell us more about Jenny.
Oh, so Jenny is the women's round the world record holder for cycling, and as such, she's obviously a total badass. But she's also just brilliant, so much fun, so down to earth. And she and I went to Colombia to make 3 films. Well, I made 2, and then she did 1 by herself at the end. And it was just a trip of a lifetime. I've always wanted to go to Colombia, and it didn't disappoint. It was just amazing.
So the 3 films were?
So the first one is it's called An Andes Adventure. So we basically cross the central Cordillera in Colombia in search of the best coffee we could find, basically these coffee plantations. So we flew out there, bear in mind the altitude's a bit of a killer already, so we flew out there and we had this 2-day ride to get over to the coffee plantations. And we looked at our route again once we were there, and we decided that actually we'd completely change it. So instead of this real nice kind of 70k road ride, we were going to just go off into the jungle and ride down some gravel tracks. And we bit off way more than we could chew, which, you know, was perhaps inevitable.
You did, Si.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Anyway, we didn't get ourselves that much into a pickle, but it was pretty bad. And then eventually we sort of got to the top of this volcano, which is like really active, and I was just crapping myself, to be completely honest. But we got out of that one as well, which was lucky, I guess. Tomorrow is going to be an epic day. I'm looking at the elevation profile on my Wahoo, and it's utterly insane.
Well, you have described that as a trip of a lifetime to me before over to Colombia, but it was also a trip that involved a bit of panic, not just because of that incident, but also because you were there at the time when COVID-19 was setting in around the world. I hadn't got to South America yet, but I know that whilst Jenny stayed on to make an extra film with us, that you were starting to think, I need to get back in case I can't be with my family.
Yes, we were right in the thick of it. So we went in February and March 2020. So yeah, the news was just dominated with, you know, borders closing, cases rising, you know, increase in fatalities. Unfortunately, South America didn't have any cases at that point. But as you say, I was really, really worried that I was not going to be able to make it back. And I needn't have worried, given that the UK borders still aren't shut nearly a year later. But at the time, I didn't know that, and so I was kind of relieved as well to leave and get back to my family. Whereas Jenny then stayed on and made a final film as well.
Obviously, we were panicking back here at the prospect of maybe not getting you back. So.
Oh, I'm sure you were, mate. Yeah, that's kind of you. But then the second film we made actually was in Medellin, so like Colombia's second city, and that was super cool. So that's like in our culture series, where it's basically just a cycling playground, even though it's a major city, and it's full of just great personalities and brands, and so Jenny went to see this like world trials champion. I got to see Santiago Botero, Rigoberto Urán, who's got like these super cool bike shops and a clothing company out there. That was like, we had a lot of fun making that one.
I enjoyed that one because I associate Medellin with drugs and crime thrillers and crime documentaries and Netflix shows, but it's a lot more than that, isn't it?
It is.
Or in your film.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't get us wrong, like it's had its real dark times, and you don't have to scratch far below the surface to see that, you know, it's still got issues. But actually, one of the people we met out there had been responsible for part of the kind of urban regeneration. And it's fascinating. There's this whole neighbourhood which used to be one of the kind of like narco slums, basically. And one of the things was that they realised that people couldn't get out of it into the city, so they were just trapped in this area. So they built outdoor escalators, and it's completely revolutionised it. It's now a tourist hotspot. You know, it's full of graffiti and it's brightly coloured, and it's incredible, really, a real success story. I really hope that COVID hasn't like hit the city too badly, because it was, you know, it's really on the up. But hey, maybe we'll go back.
One day, yeah, no, very cool. What Simon failed to mention was that he also mentioned a 13 or 14-year-old lad that he reckons is the next big star cycling because he dropped Si.
Well, he just demolished me. He's a super talent. I genuinely think he's a super talent. You know, obviously Colombia is giving us so many amazing bike races at the moment, and this is Club in Medellin, which is generating some fantastic riders. And yeah, he made. He made this climb look so easy. He was great. He was actually close to 17, which is why he dropped me as easily as he did.
So he should be in the pro ranks very soon. Right, we should move on. Now, we've already mentioned about Si's epic adventure in Colombia, my meeting of the legends, Mark Threlfall doing the Norseman, but this is not just about GCN or even GTN presenters. We wrote other people in as well. You've heard about Jenny Graham, who had the round the world record, still does, I believe. And we've also got the men's round the world record holder, Mark Beaumont. We've roped him into quite a few challenges, all of them epic, as you might imagine. And we've also got the exclusive of his round the world record film, which we're very much looking forward to too. Over to you, Mark.
Around the World in 80 Days. It is coming out on GCN Plus, and I cannot wait. It's how can I reflect on that? Well, the book was something I loved writing. I've often had the chance in the last year or so to talk about Around the World in 80 Days, but it's only when you see the pictures, it's only when you see the film, when you see the relentless effort of that race around planet Earth, 18,000 miles, that you'll understand that it wasn't just me on my bike, but it was this incredible team, this performance team, logistics team, trying to get around planet Earth faster than anyone's ever done it before. So the documentary has been a long time coming. It's something I'm really proud of, and I'm excited that it's found the right home. The Around the World in 80 Days documentary is something I'm super proud of. It was the hardest bike ride I've ever been on. Having first pedaled around planet Earth when I was 23 years old and doing it in about half a year, unsupported, to then go back 10 years later with a support team, with a logistics team, and to try and really dial this, to try and figure out how humanly fast can you get around planet Earth. And worth remembering that there was no reference point for this. So the previous circumnavigation world record was 123 days. So that Victorian fiction, that Phileas Fogg myth of can you actually get around planet Earth in 80 days, was something that I think people thought were pretty nuts before I set out. I think Cy Richardson and the GCN team thought it was a bit crazy, because Cy rode with me day one day of the 2.5 month race around the planet, starting at 4 a.m, riding 4 times 4 hour sets, sleeping only 5 hours, get back on the bike at 4, repeat. And I think you have to see that slideshow view of the world, see that we cleared Europe in a week, but also understand that it's not just a bike race. It's not just that physicality and the sleep deprivation and the nutrition and what it takes to ride the bike, but it's all the border crossings, it's the deserts, it's going through New Zealand in the heart of winter, it's the crashes, it's all the thoughts and the human dynamics in the team that made that work, and nearly didn't. I mean, so nearly didn't. One of the things that's been said a few times since the Around the World in 80 Days finished was it looked too slick, it looked too professional, you did exactly what you said you're going to do. Well, watch the documentary. It's not quite as inevitable as you might think. The name is on the title, Around the World in 80 Days. That is the circumnavigation world record. But how we got there, what it took, the 2.5 years of training and planning, and then that 2.5 insane months racing around planet Earth. Yeah, I'm really excited that the documentary's out there to now tell the full story of what it took.
I absolutely love the wilds of Alaska, down through the Yukon and British Columbia. I mean, the wildlife, the bears, the wood bison, coming further south, seeing the little porcupines and the deer and the elk, and it's wild.
Come on, Mark! Good luck, man!
Ready, buddy?
There you go! That was even faster than the Tour de France.
The final genre to tell you about is science and tech. So who better to talk you through one of their favourite projects than Ollie Bridgewood?
Visiting Colnago is an incredible experience. I mean, first and foremost, Ernesto Colnago is without question one of the most important people there has been in the history of cycling. The innovation that he's been behind, you know, over the years, when you look back into, you know, things that have happened in the 1970s and 80s and bike tech and how he furthered it, it's quite astounding. And a testament to that is the incredible museum that they have at their HQ in Milan. And you go inside, I was like a kid in a sweet shop. There's just this vast panoply of incredible bikes and just incredible designs. And it's a who's who of cycling in terms of the legends that have ridden the bikes in that museum. You've got the Mapei bikes, you've got countless hour records and Olympic medal winning designs, things that were just outrageous when they burst onto the scene. And it was incredible to actually speak to Ernesto and get him to talk through what he regards as the most important designs, like distill that down into the technological things that he's most proud of creating.
In the early 1980s, Colnago updated his then flagship race bike, the Super, with something that was stiffer. It was this, the Mexico. Like the Super, it was built from Columbus tubing, but with an important but subtle difference. There was a slight crimp along the centre of the tubing, which you can see here.
He's 89 now, and still he goes to work. He walks every day to his office in the factory, and he's still all there, and he's still heavily involved in the company. Not as much as he was, but he still has a very active role in the business, and he's just mad passionate about it. And it's kind of like, he's a great example of that sort of cliche of work. Turn your passion into work and you'll never work a day in your life. He just loves it. He just loves bikes. In terms of what Ernesto Colnago's like, he's a very softly spoken, quiet man. He's sort of quite reserved. He's one of those people that when he speaks, people listen, which I find quite interesting. And some other cool stuff that actually happened sort of behind the scenes while we were there that I can sort of tell you about is, Tadej Pogačar turned up fresh after, performing well in the Vuelta, way before his Tour de France win. So, who could have predicted that he would have gone on and won the Tour the next year? Like no one at the time, but he was there. He met Ernesto with his parents, and Ernesto came down from his office and actually presented him with a Colnago bike for him to race on that year, which was, in person with his parents and stuff. It was, a pretty sort of cool moment to see. In the museum, there's also a book, and everyone that visits Colnago HQ can sign this book and write a message in it. So we wrote one from GCN from when we visited. But I had a flick through it, and I also found there were signatures all on one day where Shane Sutton, Dave Brailsford and Wiggins and some other Sky people had all visited there in, I think, 2010, during the inception of Team Sky. And it's pretty cool because it's kind of like, oh, what a different story that would have been if they'd ended up signing with Colnago as a bike sponsor rather than Pinarello. Like, it would have gone in a different direction, but anyway, digress. My overwhelming kind of feeling after leaving Colnago and seeing what I'd seen was that this is a bike company that's just built on passion. Like, Ernesto Colnago is still super passionate about what he does, and although he has made a successful company and he has made money out of building a successful bike brand, it's just crystal clear that it's not just about that. If it was about that, he would have cashed out ages ago. It's the fact that he is just super passionate about bikes and cycling and tech and innovation, and Italian bikes in particular as well. It's really, really inspirational bloke, really cool to see.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this show. Certainly, I hope it's given you a taster of some of the amazing documentaries and films that you can find over on GCN+. Do make sure you head over to the app and check it out. And of course, as if you needed reminding, if you're watching this in February 2021, we currently have an incredible half-price offer on our annual pass, which is already amazing value, but half price is bonkers. So $19.99, that's pounds or euros, or $24 for the year. And that is live racing plus documentaries and films. So do make sure you check it out.